My friend, the A.J. Brown trade situation just got a brand new chapter, and this chapter is a massive win for Howie Roseman. A new team has entered the race for the Eagles' wide receiver, and the simple presence of this new candidate changes everything. Not because a deal has been done, not because an agreement is imminent, but because in any negotiation, the power belongs to whoever has more than one option on the table. And Howie Roseman just got exactly that. If you want to understand why this move is so important, why the timing is perfect for Philadelphia, and what it means for the return the Eagles are going to get for one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. This story is developing in real time and you don't want to be left behind. Let's go. To understand what's happening today, we need to step back a little. For months, the A.J. Brown trade board looked simple. There was one team dominating the conversation, the New England Patriots, and there was one central problem. New England wasn't willing to pay the price Roseman was asking. That stalemate became routine. The Eagles' GM held his position, waiting for the market to move in his favor. In the meantime, Roseman was building the Eagles' receiver room as if the trade were already a done deal, adding marquees Hollywood Brown, first-round pick Makai Lemon, and Dontavion Wicks in a trade with the Green Bay Packers. The message was clear. The Eagles don't need A.J. Brown to compete in 2026. And now, with the Jacksonville Jaguars entering the picture, Roseman is sitting in the most comfortable position any GM could want. But before we get into the new player in this game, there's a financial layer to this story that every Eagles fan needs to understand, because it explains exactly why Roseman has been so patient and why the next 2 to 3 weeks are absolutely critical. If the Eagles trade A.J. Brown before June 1st, Philadelphia absorbs a dead cap hit of over $20 million in 2026. That's the price of moving him early. But if Roseman waits until after June 1st, the structure of Brown's contract splits across 2 years, and the Eagles can save approximately $7 million in cap space this season. $7 million that can be reinvested into the roster, used on extensions, or kept as flexibility heading into next year. Roseman knows this. Every team on the other side of this negotiation knows this. And that deadline, June 1st, is the invisible clock ticking behind every single conversation happening right now around A.J. Brown. According to insider Jason La Canfora, the Jacksonville Jaguars could become a team to watch as a potential trade destination for A.J. Brown. The logic is straightforward. Brian Thomas Jr. regressed significantly in his second season and has become the subject of trade rumors, while Travis Hunter, the number 2 overall pick in the 2025 draft, is going to be playing far more as a cornerback than as a wide receiver going forward. That leaves a massive void in Jacksonville's offense, and A.J. Brown would fill that void instantly. But here's the point that goes beyond simple on-field fit, my friend. What Jacksonville's entry represents for the dynamic of this negotiation is far more important than any technical analysis of offensive scheme, because now Howie Roseman has what every negotiator wants: real competition. And competition changes everything. Think about the previous scenario. The New England Patriots were at the table but weren't willing to pay the asking price. Roseman had no way to force New England's hand because there was no other serious buyer on the other side. In negotiations, when you only have one buyer, the buyer holds the power. They can sit back, wait, wear down the seller, and eventually get a discount. That's exactly what was happening with the A.J. Brown trade. Now the scenario has completely shifted. If Jacksonville enters a bidding war with New England, Roseman can simply hold his price, or raise it. The teams start watching each other, calculating what the other side is willing to offer, and the seller collects the benefits of that tension. The simple presence of a second interested team forces the Patriots to show their cards earlier, to make a more aggressive offer to avoid losing the target, and if the Patriots raise their offer, Jacksonville can respond. That cycle is exactly what Roseman needed to maximize the return on a player who, financially, needs to move after June 1st for Philadelphia to capture the cap savings. And why does Jacksonville make so much sense from a football standpoint? Because the Jaguars' wide receiver room situation is critical. Brian Thomas Jr. was one of the biggest surprises in the NFL in 2024. 87 receptions, 1,282 yards, and 10 touchdowns as a rookie, historic numbers. But in 2025, the player vanished. 48 receptions, 707 yards, 2 touchdowns. A brutal drop that a combination of injuries and scheme changes in Jacksonville doesn't fully explain. And Travis Hunter, who was supposed to be the ideal complement to Brian Thomas Jr. in the offense, ended up being redirected to the defense. The result is a team that spent the number 2 pick in the draft and still doesn't have an elite wide receiver in their room. A.J. Brown would solve that immediately. Now let's talk about the connection that makes this trade even more intriguing. Mike Vrabel. The New England Patriots head coach is one of the main reasons the Patriots have always been cited as favorites to land A.J. Brown. Vrabel was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans during Brown's best years in the league. It was there that the wide receiver became an elite player, that he developed the competitor's mindset that defines him, and Vrabel clearly wants Brown on his team again. That personal and professional connection between coach and player is real, and it gives the Patriots an emotional edge in this negotiation that other teams simply don't have. But here's the beauty of the situation for Roseman. Even with that emotional edge, it means nothing if the price isn't right. And with Jacksonville now potentially at the table, the Patriots can no longer rely on the argument that Brown is going to want to play for Vrabel regardless. The Eagles have an alternative exit. And an alternative exit means leverage. There's one more team in this story we can't ignore: the Los Angeles Rams. At some point this offseason, the Rams were connected to A.J. Brown, and the plan would have involved pivoting away from Davante Adams to create the financial space for the trade to happen. The Rams aren't at the center of the conversation right now, but the fact that another NFC contender already floated the idea shows the level of interest around A.J. Brown in the market. This is not a wide receiver being traded because demand is low. The demand is there. What Roseman was waiting for was the right moment to turn that demand into maximum return, and that moment has arrived. Because the timing of all of this is not coincidence. Roseman rebuilt the Eagles' receiver room methodically throughout this offseason, precisely to create this position of power. When you add Hollywood Brown, when you use the 2020 pick in the draft on Mekhi Lemon, when you bring in Dontavion Wicks via trade and immediately sign him to a 1-year, $12.5 million extension, you're sending a message to the market: the Eagles are not desperate. They can move A.J. Brown on their own terms, at the moment they choose, to the team that offers the best return. That's Roseman's roster-building philosophy in action, and it's working perfectly. What can the Eagles realistically expect to receive in return for Brown? Any conversation has to start with high-quality draft capital. At minimum, a first-round pick is the floor for a wide receiver at Brown's level. But with a bidding war developing, the conversation could evolve into multiple picks, players included in the package, or the kind of creative deal structure that Roseman, famous for engineering complex trades, has almost certainly already mapped out across every possible scenario. What is clear is that the Eagles are operating from a position of strength. A.J. Brown is 28 years old, coming off all pro-level seasons, and is one of the few wide receivers in the NFL who can genuinely transform an offense overnight. Any team that acquires him will pay a steep price and will justify that price. The question now is not whether the trade happens. It's who pays the most to make sure it happens for their team. Howie Roseman spent months building this situation. Every offseason move, every signing, every trade, every draft pick was a brick in this structure. And now, with the Jacksonville Jaguars potentially entering the equation and the New England Patriots knowing they're no longer alone at the table, Roseman is exactly where he wanted to be, in complete control of how this story ends. Which team do you think wins the race for A.J.? Brown? Patriots, Jaguars, Rams, or does a surprise team show up at the last second? Drop your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back later with the latest Eagles updates.